All right, welcome back to another episode of Thoughts in Stereo Remote Edition. Today, on our second remote episode, we have Mr. Peter. Is it Takis or Takis?
Takis.
Mr. Peter Takis. What kind of name is that?
Greek.
Yes, I'm half Greek too, as I figured. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Welcome.
You have a really good relationship with
Yes.
Takis, I believe. So why don't you do a little introduction? Peter, why don't you introduce yourself a little? Let's get the ball rolling.
I think, Peter and I have worked together for some time now. We've gotten close as friends. He's one of the hardest working guys I know. And I think that his story is a lot different than most other people that I know in the music industry doing what he's doing, and the way he came up and the steps that he took to get to where he wanted to be is super inspiring and different, like I said. So Peter, kick us off. Let us know who you are.
I appreciate that, Nick. So I am Takis. I am a DJ first, music producer, songwriter, and as of 3 days ago, an AMC/GameStop financial expert.
There he is. There he is.
I'm just kidding.
That's
Dope. You've been doing I guess technically you've been doing the Takis project since Wait For Me came out, which was in July. That was the official kickoff of the project. But you've had quite a bit of music industry experience before this, before the Takis project.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in like middle school, listening to like early Kanye, early Kid Cudi. I'm refreshing Dat Piff every other day. And I remember just being super young, saying, I need to be a part of this in some way. I'm from a small town with no music industry, but what these guys are doing on the internet is so much cooler than what all my friends are talking about. It's so much cooler than what they're playing on the radio when my mom's driving me to like hockey. Mm-hmm. And I tried to wrap my head around how I could be a part of it in a small way. And in high school, I was lucky enough to get an internship at a small independent hip hop station in Winnipeg called Streets 104.7, Winnipeg's #1 source for hip hop and R&B.
Wow, there you go.
So I was like 16, 17, getting coffee, taking notes. It was essentially whatever I was asked to do, I would do, because I was so thankful to just be allowed into this building. The fact that I had a key card was like the coolest thing in the world, that I was allowed in a radio station at any time. And probably the most important moment in that was they let me on air late night. So like, keep in mind, this is a small station. So even the morning show, no one was really listening to. So you could imagine like 11 PM that 4 of my friends would tune in when they're going to 7-Eleven. Yeah. But the moment that changed it all was when they invited me to a music meeting, where they started saying, hey, like, let us know what songs you think we should try to add to rotation. They had some freedom. And I'm, like I said, like, I'm on Dat Piff. I'm on Hot New Hip Hop every 45 minutes in that era. I'm telling them about Meek Mill, Dreams Chasers is trending. We need to add, I'm talking about Shot Callers is the hottest song on the internet. We need to add it. And those small victories of, hey, we're actually going to add your song to your slot was like the biggest victory, because I was influencing now other people. I was getting to add some song on the radio that was going to influence, even though it was 4 of my friends, it was going to influence them in a small way. And I mean, that progression just kept going. How can I be a part of it in a bigger way every step of the way? And when you're doing radio, you get one ad, all of a sudden I'm like, yo, if I was a DJ, I could do a 2-hour set and no one tells me no. I don't have to play no ads. I'm curating the entire 2 hours and no one could tell me anything. Yeah. So that's like progression number 2. And then I guess in my case, I started looking at artists and other DJs saying, wow, it's really cool to like choose my own songs as a DJ. But it's like crazy playing your own songs. So that was the step of now trying to make records and figure out this piece of the puzzle.
Damn. I think your knowledge of radio and starting out in radio really helps your ear as an A&R and a songwriter. You know,
sometimes I try not to push it too hard because immediately my radio brain says, we need more hooks. It needs to be shorter. So like my radio brain, with the right person, when I'm working with you, when I'm working with Milano, it works really well because we have a balance. But if I was just allowed full freedom, all my songs would be 2 minutes and 30 seconds and 17 hooks.
Do you, I was going to ask, when you were talking about playing like the music and like nobody tuning in, do you have like the stats of who's tuned into the radio when you're streaming it?
So that station was so small. Eventually, when I turned 18, I moved to the Virgin radio station in my town. So we had actual data and ratings, but this was, this station was incredibly small, and we weren't even in like the ratings book. That's how tiny it was.
Oh my God.
Wow. Honestly, makes sense.
Radio was, you talk about it as being the progression to getting to where you are now. There was a lot of other entrepreneurial ventures that you've gone through to also make sure that you can live your dream as an artist and a songwriter and a producer. You've kind of taken out a part of the equation of being an artist and being, coming up as a bedroom producer and things like that. And you struggle, you try and get your songs out and you don't have any money and you're worried about how to make money and you're doing songs you don't really like to make a couple bucks. You know what I mean? Like you go through those things as a songwriter and as a producer, and you took a really different route, which I think is super fucking eye-opening to people. So I want you to tell us a little bit about Bijan.
I'm dying to hear this. Yeah, I'm dying to hear this. He's been talking about this for so long. I'm dying to hear this.
So I think the reason I took that path, I don't want to give myself too much credit. I think it's literally the city I was from, didn't have a music business, didn't have an industry. I had no other artists to look to. I literally had like 2 friends that kind of were interested in music. So I had to find other ways to prove that this is also a business. And also just like I grew up super humble beginnings. There was always financial stress growing up. So for me, there was always a chip on my shoulder. How is this a business? How can I prove this is a business? And then I can go have the fun and I could just be a free artist like I want. So starting out, man, I was like, if we're going all the way.
Yeah, I want some t-shirts.
Okay, cool. So I'm like 14. I'm in love with, like I said, the music of the internet. None of my friends are rocking with it. And I'm like, the only skill I had was like an 8th grader graphic artist skill. That was my only skill. Like I could kind of use Photoshop, but I was still absolutely terrible. But it was my only skill in life. So I had to rock with it. So I came up with this idea. If I start like designing clothing and t-shirts, maybe I'll get to like sell them at concert venues when artists come by, or maybe I could sell them at a store that's involved with music. And then that brand kind of evolved. And next thing you know, I'm calling up artists, and artists don't answer your calls or emails usually. But when you're saying, hey, I got a free merch package, those managers start saying, hey, of course. Yeah. What artist didn't want a free merch pack?
Of course.
So, being 14, 15, 16, I'm sending every artist on the planet merch packs. I am losing all of my money. I'm working at Sport Check at the time too to fund this, because this is a business that's hemorrhaging money. All I'm doing is sending artists boxes. And, I got really lucky at one point where, Mac Miller was wearing one of the t-shirts, and then J. Cole was photographed wearing one of the t-shirts, and then DMX is wearing one of the t-shirts. And I started saying, oh, wow, this is really, really amazing. I'm starting to build relationships with artists in a very unique way where they were incredibly warm and friendly. I wasn't like, hey guys, I'm a producer. Here are 10 beats, rap on all of them. Instead, I was like, hey, I got these really cool t-shirts. They're all yours. I don't want to shout out. You don't have to wear them, but I really respect you as an artist. So that led to some really meaningful early relationships that, some of those artists we're still friends with to this day, like 10 years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big part of it. And then obviously radio was kind of my life. That was proving that it could be something, local club DJ as well. That's like, you know, I was making like $10 in drink tickets. I was getting free wings every time I would DJ for 16 hours. But that was a part of the story as well.
Working for dinner at that point.
And I guess like the final piece of the puzzle for me growing up, before I signed my first deal, before music was legit, I opened like a lounge / music venue, a very small one, a very ill-advised startup as well. Really, food business is not the easiest business in the world. But I started that also because I should have started it saying, hey, I love food and I want to have the best food in town. I actually started it because I'm like, hey, we'll do the food thing because everyone else wants that. But on Fridays and Saturdays, we can start bringing in DJs and maybe we can start bringing in artists. So it was like selfish intent trying to like be a music venue as well. Business failed at a catastrophic level. but it was a really amazing like learning experience, because now when I signed my first deal and I started doing Vegas shows and I started playing festivals, I knew in the back of my head how hard it is for the owner of the venue. I know how hard these staff are working, and I treat people just with a whole different level of respect, because I know how hard it is to run a music venue because I ran one myself.
How many different moving parts there are at all times. You know, it's easy. Like you see a lot of these artists, sometimes they have a little bit of an ego or something and they forget who they're talking to and how much work that person is putting into their production and helping get that to its best.
I've told a few people this, like off camera, off mic. As hard as I've worked in music for the past 10 years and as full time as what I'm doing right now for the Takis project, that 2 years, that music venue, that little lounge was the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life. So I just have so much respect for small business owners, people that are trying to keep these music venues alive, especially like in this time, obviously.
Jesus.
You said you worked at Sport Check. I worked at Sport Check too. That's pretty good. It's a good ass job.
I'm not gonna lie, the discounts at the time, it was, you know, I respect Sport Check, man. Shout out.
I hear that. That's an incredible story though. And it's always nice to hear people that like, there's a difference between someone that like would own a music venue or something like a restaurant, like anything like that, without having worked in that industry. And then you kind of don't have the perspective that everyone has in the venue or like the people doing their job. So I'm sure the people that work at these venues and whatnot are very appreciative of you kind of having been in their shoes or like knowing what it's like, you know, to do what they do. And
I mean,
it's really
also on a different level, even just with the clothing or the radio. Now, when we do radio runs, I know what that host is dealing with. I know they might not be familiar with my story, so I better try to be friendly and familiar at the start. I should try to give them certain points. When I'm talking to a radio programmer, I know what's going on in their heads, even if it's certain elements of songs. Or now when we've done merch and we've done a really wide collection of merch giveaways, I know exactly where to go to get the perfect fit. I know exactly what printing company to use. And so there's a lot of these elements that they felt very challenging at the time to like bash my head against the wall for 10 years. But they've, you know, they're the reason I'm here today.
They all added up to give you your business knowledge today and how to deal with situations, how to deal with different people. And that's a massive thing that people, you know, sometimes they learn the hard way is how to deal with other people. And there's a lot of egos involved, and it's really hard to put your ego aside sometimes. And, you know, you learn from doing these other jobs and working in these other industries and understanding that like your thing isn't always the hardest thing going on. You know, other people have different things they're dealing with every day and whatever. Like you said, you better make a good impression off the bat because people don't know your story. You know, I think that's a key piece of information. So we had the t-shirt business, you had your restaurant, you had Virgin Radio, and you had the other radio station before that. You were working there. And then you had barbershops.
that as well. Right. I sound like a used car salesman on this podcast.
The only reason I bring it all up is because I just want to stress how many things you did before. It's not like it was just like, okay, I want to be in music, and then you're now in music. And the steps that you went through, and the industries that you went through, and the people you worked with, just to gain the knowledge to be the best possible artist you can. And I think that your work ethic as an art, watching very closely and working very closely together, I think that you have a work ethic that people don't see often. And that's why I'm stressing so much your story and how you came up, because I think it's really important for people to hear how you became how you are,
Yeah. During that process, throughout everything, whether it was starting on Virgin Radio or whether it was the restaurant, my priority with all of that was still music. I was still putting out songs that obviously no one cared about, and they got 144 plays on SoundCloud. But I was still saying, hey, music's my first thing. There's this other thing I'm doing to add to the puzzle, and also I have to pay my bills or I'm going to be out on the street. So at the base of it, it was always music. But in terms of the barbershop, so my clothing, my little t-shirt company, once these artists started wearing our stuff, I mean, when DMX tweets a link, that can change the business of a kid. I ran out of clothes. I started actually seeing money off this project that wasn't doing well. And eventually I said, hey, let's turn this into a real store. Let's go real physical location. And it's funny because as artists or anyone in general, you start online. My startup cost for my little t-shirt company was a $10 website, and I'm the only employee. But eventually we're like, you know what? We need a physical store so people think we're legit. But now in 2021, everyone realizes internet, Amazon, e-commerce is what you're supposed to do. But for some reason, I thought I needed a physical store. So I opened it. It's going well for a bit. Keep in mind, I'm still not in a major city. There's not a lot of foot traffic. All of a sudden, things are getting a little tight. I'm still DJing. I'm still on Virgin. So I had to get a staff. And I was like, yo, I don't know if this business is going to work. I don't know if I could keep doing this clothing store. I love the brand. It's making money online, but this atrocity, this brick and mortar store is just hemorrhaging money. And all of a sudden, one of my friends reached out to me. They're like, hey, I got kicked out of my barbershop. Can I rent the corner of your store? And I'm like, how much do barbers pay for chairs? I didn't know, right? And he's like, yeah, I was paying $800 a month to this salon. I'll give you $600. So I'm like, what? Wait, you pay that much to rent a barber chair? I was like, come in there on the first. And then once I started realizing, oh, wait, barbers bring traffic, which is so valuable. A barber brings traffic to a clothing store, and they're starting to pay bills. So once I realized that barbers were the wave, I just I turned my clothing store that was 99% clothing, 1% barber into 90%. It was just barber chairs everywhere. And I had one line of clothes on the far side. And I realized that was a really great business. And I think the fun part for me, because that doesn't sound very fun, the fun part for me was meeting barbers and wondering, hey, how can you charge $50 for a fade when Supercuts is charging $15, and how are you booked for the next 5 weeks where we can't even slot you in, and Supercuts has walk-ins? And I started saying, wait, barbers can be like artists, man. Barbers can have their own merch. Barbers can have their own social media. They can have their own podcast. They can be rock stars. So once I started getting inspired with that, I started working with the barbers saying, you know what? I get it. I'm the boring landlord. You guys are going to tell me when electricity is not working properly, but let me help you build a brand, get to the point where you guys are charging the most premium price in a small market, and you guys are booked for the next 3 months straight. And that's what I was doing to kind of survive while music wasn't exactly paying bills. But the whole barbershop hustle is a big part of my life.
Man, that is a true testament to just, you cannot stop thinking about the end goal, and you can't only think in what you're doing at that time. Because some would say, okay, you need more money to make, you need to make more money so that you can fuel your music dream. Get just a random job, because that's you're going to make guaranteed money fast. Don't start your own business, which is what you did, which I think is amazing. And you continuously drove and adapted the business so that you could fuel your ultimate dream of being an artist and being in the music industry. I think that is so inspiring, and I think that people are going to absolutely love hearing that. Thank you for sharing that story with us. Now, fast forward to Takis 2020, 2021. We had your first release came out in July of 2020 with the most unfortunate timing I've ever seen in a music release. And we'll dive into why I say that. And, you had Tory Lanez and you had Goody Grace on your first record, which as an artist is an incredible accomplishment. Walk us through that. Walk us through the song, walk us through getting Tory and all that.
So I guess like a year and a half before the first single came out for the Takis project, I decided, like we were saying about like patience and taking a step back, I decided for a year and a half, I'm just going to focus on making my first solo project. I'm not going to be on social media. I literally dipped from Instagram for almost 2 years. And I'm like, I'm going to put my entire personal life, my emotional, I'm literally going to be an artist on this. I've been in business for so long and I've had real jobs, hustles, everything. I was like, for the next year and a half, 2 years, I'm going to be a pure artist. I'm going to obsess over making an incredible project. And right off the bat, to do that, I started making a list of the artists I would want to work with. At the top of that list was Goody Grace, an incredible songwriter and artist from LA, or living in LA. He's actually from my hometown. Yeah. And Tory Lanez was also number 1 or 2 on that list. And I had to obsess over how to make that happen. I didn't have, at the time, management. I didn't have a record label. I did not have a substantial budget whatsoever. So just getting in the room with him was going to require magic tricks and a whole lot of hustle. So I reached out to Goody Grace. I explained my album concept, which is called Welcome Home. It's the story of growing up in a small town that can be hostile, but it could be beautiful as well. And I explained it thinking, I don't know if he's going to rock with it right now. You know, I've been off the radar for a couple months. He's just released a song with Blink-182. He's on Fallon with G-Eazy. I'm like, this guy, you know, he might not feel it. We get on a call right away. Love the idea, bro. I'm thinking of ideas as we speak. I'm going to send you a voice note. The moment I heard that voice note, I was like, all right, I'm back. This album's going to be crazy. I was so excited. I was inspired. And I wanted to figure out how to have a contrasting feature. And I promise you at the time, Tory did not have Quarantine Radio. Chick State didn't come out.
Yeah, this was Tory from 2018 or 2019 or something like that. Early 2019.
So, Tory was always Tory, and he, a huge Canadian artist. He's had incredible moments, but he was not that hot at the time. I truly, believe it or not, vocally thought he can add just a different texture and a shock appeal of Goody, this very melancholy, guitar driven acoustic. He doesn't like auto tune or backgrounds on his voice. He's a pure artist. And have Tory come
in. We had such a hard time because I wanted doubles on his vocal and he was like, no doubles on the vocal.
He just wants everything raw.
Yeah.
So I had this very early demo. I wanted Tory on it. I thankfully had some kind of relationships. I opened for Tory when I was like 18, 7 years ago in Winnipeg. I kind of knew someone that knew his brother. I knew a barber that kind of cut his other brother's hair. And I had all these like kind of connections, but I knew that the only way I was going to get in the studio with him was I had a major label budget or I had a hot song that I sold the hell out of it. I didn't have a major label budget, so I better sell this demo. Thankfully, a couple months later, I get on the phone with his brother. I play the record. I pitch the record. I say, you don't understand. This is going to be the biggest song in the country. I'm like, you don't understand. Goody was just on TV. We're building this thing. This is the album concept. I'm telling you, just give me 5 minutes with Tory. And they play it for him, get back to me and say, you know what, maybe we're going to try to make this happen. So in my head, I'm like, wow, this is probably not going to happen, but at least they're acting like they like the song, acting like they're interested. And at the time, Tori was being a lot more liberal doing dance records, crossover records. Tori was a lot more willing to hear you out if he thought it had pop radio or dance radio potential. Hip hop features, it was bring a bag or don't talk to me. But for dance and pop, he was like, hey, maybe this is a crossover record. I'm actually going to hear you out. I'm not going to say, what's the budget? So all of a sudden, I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, crashing on my sister's couch. And I get a text from his brother saying, hey, come to Miami. Session is going to be tomorrow. I take the first flight out from Winnipeg. There's a million connecting flights. Obviously, I have to get the cheapest flight. This was not a direct flight. So I pull up in Miami and his brother's there picking me up. He's like, did you get my text? I'm like, bro, I've been on flights for the past 14 hours. And I get up. He's like, yeah, Tori had to fly to Toronto. Like, yeah, this last minute, he's on a private right now. But if you could get back to Toronto, then we'll do it there. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm scrambling. I'm literally like $5 short for my plane ticket. I'm not joking. I text my photographer, Ryan. I say, I need $5. You just got to trust me. I'm $5 short for this flight. I wasn't expecting to have to take this one to Toronto. He transfers me like $20. I'm like, okay, we're back in business. Fly back to Toronto. Eventually I'm asking for someone to pick me up. I'm staying at a friend's house. We end up getting in the studio, and I remember it being like a very cold session where his brother and his team were like, it's up to you to sell it. He's heard the record. He likes the record, but you got to explain this whole situation. And I went in, I had truthfully the confidence of 1 out of 100, but I said, yo, I was like, Tori, I don't say this often, but this is a hit record. This is going to help you. And he's looking at me like, this kid's fucking insane. This guy's lost his mind. He's talking about this is going to help me. I don't even know who you are. My brother just said you had a hot record. Eventually he trusts me enough to try to freestyle. I was lucky enough to see his process and watch him, put together a really unique verse. And I thought it fit very well. I was thankful. I was very happy leaving that studio. And that was song number 1 off the album.
Yeah. And what a great song it ended up being. He crushed that verse. He sounds incredible on it.
And nothing newsworthy happened after that story.
Yeah, absolutely nothing with any of the artists involved. Not like anything happened, 4 hours right before the release day to absolutely just kibosh the, nothing happened.
On a positive note on that song, I'm always going to be proud of it because I think it was some of the best work I've ever done. And it created the sound that I'm doing today. It created the team I have today. And just on a personal note with us, that's how you and I connected. Yeah. I remember being at a point where we had I was working with Milano, our fellow homie, on producing this record. I felt like I had an incredible top line. I had an incredible verse, but I didn't know how to turn this very simple production into something great. And me and Milano were on version 1, version 2, then we're on version 10, then we're on version 12. And I remember just coming to the point where I'm like, I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think we're going to figure it out. And we kept trying. And on version 15, we just started making it worse. Every demo that came back would be worse. So I was like, who can I call that can save the day? Because we have all these demos. I love this song. I think it's a hit. Who can hear it from fresh ears and turn this into an actual hit record? And thankfully you replied to my email, and your fresh ears saved the day because, we were going a bit crazy with that demo until you heard it.
A great song speaks for itself. If you played that song as an acoustic version, I think that shit is still a hit. So you put together a great song. But yeah, so the day of release comes. And this isn't a long story because everyone knows the story past this, but day of release comes, and at 8 p.m., I believe it was 4 hours before the song comes out, I got a text from Eric saying, call me right now. We are so fucked. And I call Eric, and Eric proceeds to tell me the story about Tory shooting Meg Thee Stallion in the foot 4 hours before the song comes out. And then I think some of our publications fell through and some of the day one press release stuff fell through. And, you know,
on a positive note though, and I know this sounds like I'm just saying this, but that taught me a lot because I've never been so prepared for a release rollout than I was for Wait For Me. I mean, I had shot the video 6 months before I even had a record deal. We were mixing and mastering the record before we even knew if it was what label it was going to. We had the press planned out. We had the photo roll. We had behind the scenes. We were getting ready for an acoustic version. And that lesson was, hey, Takis, I know you think you have everything figured out and you got your little chart and you got your little checklist and you think everything's great because you planned it so perfectly, but you're going to get a text 3 hours before the song comes out that every publication dropped your story and you're probably not going to playlist and radio's not going to. So, I mean, it was a learning lesson that, hey, there's nothing guaranteed in this music business. It's a lie to act like I had everything figured out. So, hey, I mean, I learned from it. And we're making strong records. So, I mean, that's in the past.
Wow.
Bigger and better. Yeah, I always look back on that story and think, damn, like anything can really happen. You really don't know. Even while something's happening, you're like, this could still fall apart in some way. Like, you know, something can always happen. But like you said, we move on. We keep making great records. I know because we work together, but why don't you tell us a little bit about everything you're working on and you know, what's upcoming for the Takis project? What's upcoming for Peter Takis as a person, you know? So
this upcoming Friday, the 12th, the third single off my album, Welcome Home, All Time, is going to be out. It is a song that I'm so excited about. It's featuring Jamie Fine and Brandon Burnett. This record, I feel like, is the moment we're telling the world this is our sound. Whether it's the guitar, whether it's like the chill house energy, whether it was the Jamie's big vocal and Brandon's kind of melancholy verse, this is like a statement to say, hey, this is the sound of the project. We've dialed it in. You heard Wait For Me, but we've dialed it in on All Time. So I'm incredibly proud, man. This Friday, the third record off the project. And also we're going to be relentless this year. Last year, 2020, everyone was like playing stop and go musical chairs, not sure, like, should we be dropping? Do you think things are going to reopen? Will a tour happen? And now we're like, you know what? We're going to stop looking at the news and we're just going to put really good music really often. So 2021, there's just going to be a relentless consistency of strong records that I was too afraid to release last year.
Yeah, we have, you have a lot of records, I think, lined up and a lot of things you're working on. I think Jamie is such an incredible feature for you to have on this project in particular because of, one, being a Canadian, really, really strong singer, really, really, really strong voice. And like you said, the contrast with having Brandon in there, it makes for a great, well-rounded record. And the fact that we got this song done with all three of you guys being in different cities and different countries, and all the, you know, Brandon's in LA, Jamie's in Ottawa. People are sending vocals all over the place and working and this and that and whatever. And it was just great that we had such a good song come together through all of that. I can't hear it, man.
I told Jamie this the other day. I was like, you had like the biggest song on Canadian radio while I was an employee on Canadian radio. So like I was going crazy hearing her music. So I was like, yo, it's an epic moment that like when I have a song, you're willing to jump on it, because I was just an employee at the radio station forced to play your song every 45 minutes when Ain't Easy was number one thing you could play. And I just told her it was like a surreal moment to see her trust me and be willing to do a song with me after just being a fan of hers for years. And also just, you know, we just got back a couple hours ago, the acoustic version, one of the demos. And this week has been a lot, release week for any artist listening right now. They know the pressure emotionally, mentally, and just schedule wise. I'm going to do a bunch of radio liners after this. Friday's going to be a hectic one. And this morning I was like sitting there feeling overwhelmed, saying, man, it's release week. I'm not that excited because I'm so tired and there's so much pressure. There's so many people that have expectations. And I'm not joking. The moment I heard the acoustic version, I just like snapped out of it. And I was like, okay, this is why I do this, for songs like this to make me feel this way. And it just snaps you out of the chaos. So just on a side tangent, I heard our acoustic version demo and it made me feel like I'm on the right path. Just throughout all the chaos, just hearing a song like that, I've looped it like 10 times up until Nick sent me a link for this Zoom call.
I think always hearing acoustic versions of electronic songs is really cool and inspiring, that it sounds just as good as an acoustic song, as just Jamie and Brandon and a guitar, you know? And you get through the whole thing. You don't feel bored. You don't feel like it's dragging on. It's just a really good song with a really good message. I don't know what else to say about it. It's great, and it's gonna be.
I think it's just like. Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying this episode will be out February 8th, which is Monday, and this Friday is the release, the all-time release. So we'll be able to link it and all that stuff in the podcast. But Bijan, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, I think the thing about doing an EDM or like a dance song and then having the acoustic version, I think what hits people so differently is like the original song is like such a huge production and so many moving parts and like this whole like big production. And then like just the acoustic is like just one instrument, one voice usually, and that's it. And then it's like such a huge contrast, and it's like a whole different light of the song that you maybe wouldn't have got from the original, which I think was really cool about what you were saying as well.
Eric, my brother and our manager, tells me that you also have a podcast coming soon.
So I told myself 2 years ago.
I don't know if I was supposed to talk about it or not, but here we are.
Let's rock. So 2 years ago, I told myself, I'm a full-time artist. I only want to focus on music. I did the things that I had to do to get here, to be able to say I pay my bills off music and get to dedicate my whole life. So I said, you know what? I don't want to be on TikTok. I'm not going to be all over social media. I'm just going to be a pure artist and care about the music. That was the mission. And then COVID happened and I started looking at my calendar and I'm saying, I don't know if I'm going to get to do a show this summer. That was last year. And then I'm like, I don't know if I'll be able to do a Halloween event. And I'm like, I don't know if I can play New Year's parties. And now I've just accepted that, hey, I want to occupy my time with something really interesting. I don't think I'm going to be able to tour. I don't think the Vegas shows are going to happen or the festivals. So what can I do that's going to stimulate my mind, use some of my radio past and put together a podcast? And I was against it for 2 years. But the moment I started planning and shooting episodes, it's like been the funnest thing ever. I've had the most outrageous guests and the most interesting conversations. So in the near future, we're going to start putting them out just for fun as a side project of ours.
I've only heard rumblings of people you've had on and very short stories about stuff that you've talked about on the podcast even before releasing it. And I'm really looking forward to listening to it and watching it. And it's, I can't wait for that to come out. Do you have a date in mind of when you think you're going to be releasing?
I'm thinking middle of April. And just for context on how wild the guests are, I was at the point where I would watch like a true crime documentary on Netflix. And instead of enjoying it, I'd be like, hey, there's a person behind this true crime story. Maybe I could call them and get them on my podcast. So just for a little context, there's some turnt characters on the show. But it's been fun.
I can't wait, man. All right. Well, I think this has been a pretty short episode, but we've covered a lot of ground. And is there anything else that we wanted to add, Bijan?
Dude, I mean, like, I'm just sitting here like in awe. Like, I think I'm like, I don't know what else. Like, I could talk for hours. So let's just cut it there. Like, I could just dissect every individual bit of like every story, but that's going to literally have us sitting here for 4 hours. So I think that's a really good place to be right now.
I think
Nick, anything else?
I think
before we go, I need to shout out Bijan for his meme quality. I follow you on Twitter, and it brightens my day whenever you're ruffling the feathers of so many Canadians. So I just want to thank you for that, man. You brighten my day without even knowing it.
Wow, I really did not know it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Grapes and mayo, man.
Oh my god. So ridiculous.
Peter, thank you so much for coming on, man. Thank you for sharing your stories. I think I've said it a million times, I think it's really inspiring to people listening, and people are going to enjoy you being open about your stories and talking about what you've done up until this point, and knowing that you are a very driven person that knows exactly what you want next and how you're going to go and get it, and nothing's going to stand in your way.
And that next thing is all time this Friday, going number 1.
By the time of this release, it'll already be out, so everyone go stream that, please.
Boom. All right. Peace, boys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Nick.
Peace.